live video streaming experience, presented by fentanylsolution.org in collaboration with the compassionate minds at the Fentanyl Solution Group. Get ready for engaging conversations, expert insights. Welcome to Fentanyl Solution, advocating for lives, inspiring change.
Welcome and thank you for listening to Fentanyl Solution syndicated podcast and live stream. I'm Janice M. Celeste, your host and president and CEO of fentanylsolution.org and the Fentanyl Solution Group. The Fentanyl Solution podcast is based in Orange County, California, but we are a nationwide nonprofit organization. I want you to tell all of your followers about the show. Share this link, and after all, sharing is caring. The replay will be available for sharing after the broadcast. Know that our hashtag for the show is Fentanyl Solution, is hashtag Fentanyl Solution, I should say. My guests today is Kim Hicks. Kim is a parent who has lost an adult child to fentanyl poisoning. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Janice, for asking me to be here. I appreciate you allowing me to share our story.
I appreciate you coming to tell your story because I know it's difficult and to rehash it. I think it's important, though, for everyone to realize that this can happen to anyone, and it crosses all economic boundaries, all racial demographics. Every city in the United States has been affected by illicit fentanyl. Can you tell us a little bit about your daughter, Kelsie, and your story?
Yes, and you're correct. This does not discriminate whatsoever. It's in all demographics. It's in all, all parts of the country, rich, poor. It does not matter. Fentanyl is just killing an entire generation of people. It is everywhere. But our story, my daughter, Kelsie, was 23. And she had severe anxiety that she'd had for many years, starting in the 8th grade, severe anxiety and depression. She had a wonderful doctor, wonderful psychiatrist who tried to help her get this under control, but apparently her depression was resistant to any of the medications that he tried for her. And she stayed in a deep depression most of the time, as well as her anxiety couldn't be controlled. My daughter grew up here in the home with us, her brother, her father, my husband. We've been married 31 years. But it was a very chaotic upbringing for her, very stressful, because her older brother, my son, has intermittent explosive disorder. So he has raged pretty much his entire life, or he has his entire life, for absolutely, if the wind blows in the wrong direction or whatever. She was diagnosed with complex PTSD as a result of growing up pretty much in a war zone, listening to him screaming and yelling and raging all the time. And when her depression and anxiety set in, she could not get away from the bad thoughts in her head and the depression and how bad she felt. And she self-medicated despite having prescriptions for depression and anxiety. She started with marijuana, and then that just progressed to different drugs. She had been in and out of rehabs a couple of times. But at the time that this happened to her last February, she had just gotten out of rehab January the 17th. She had been there for 3 months. It was a wonderful program here where we live in South Carolina, in Simpsonville, South Carolina. And we were able to see our daughter, our real daughter, for 3 months. She was there for 3 months. And it was wonderful to see her again without any of the other mind-altering drugs on board. And she didn't like doing drugs. She didn't like what it did to her, and she didn't like doing them, but she just didn't know how else to escape the pain in her head. And she and I talked very freely and openly about everything. But the day that this happened, she was getting dressed to go somewhere, and she had gotten some Xanax from someone else. And that's what she would do, apparently, because her doctor would not prescribe Xanax because it was so addicting. And apparently the medications that he did give her for her anxiety, she felt did not help her. So she found some Xanax from somebody else. She was told it was Xanax, and it was a Saturday evening. My parents were here for a cookout. My husband was grilling. We were all here. And Kelsey's room is just a few feet from my room. And she had been in there getting dressed. And I just went in there to talk to her, as I always do, just to sit and chat. We were very, very close, extremely close, almost as one. I knew what she was thinking before she was thinking it. Just in all sorts of ways, we were almost as one person. She was my heart and my soul. But I went down to just chat with her, talk about where she was going, and make sure she didn't want to stay for dinner with her grandparents. And what I found was a horrific sight. I found my daughter sitting on her floor cross-legged, her head over on the ground. She was saturated in her own vomit. She had very, very long, beautiful hair, and she was saturated, and she was still making noise. And I just had this gut feeling. I knew that she was dying, and I just start screaming, and I pushed her back, and she was already blue, and stuff was coming out. So I started doing CPR. My mother came upstairs and assisted with CPR. She had been a nurse for 40-something years and was retired. So that she and I together did CPR until paramedics and first responders got here, and they worked on her. Oh my gosh, all of those guys and girls. There must have been 30 people here. They worked on her nonstop. They did everything possible they could for her. They worked on her for an hour. They gave her Narcan several times. They did the shock, the electric shock. And, I'm just screaming the whole time for them not to stop. Please don't stop, because she was my love. And just at the last minute, about an hour into it, one of them said, "We've got to call it. What's the time?" And as he said that, one of them said, wait a minute, I found a heartbeat." And so they got her all wrapped up and rushed her to the hospital. And we followed behind, of course. And the doctors just told us immediately, though, that her brain had been without oxygen for so long, for that hour, that she was already brain dead, but that her heart was still beating, but that her heart would eventually give out. We chose not to take, she was put on life support, and we chose to leave her on life support so that we could just hold her hand and spend as much time with her as we could until her heart decided to go on its own. So it ended up being exactly 24 hours until her heart beat for the last time. I found her at about 5:30 Saturday, February 26th, and her heart beat for the last time the next day, Sunday, February 27th at 5:27 p.m.
I'm so sorry. And this is heartbreaking. And so sorry to put you through rehashing this, so that just for the audience sake, you want to get this word out to other people, right?
Well, that's what, yeah, because parents don't know what's going on, and they don't know what to look for, and they've got to stay vigilant on top of their kids and looking through their kids' phones and messages. And because, like I said, don't think your kid is too perfect or too great, or the great overachiever that, oh no, they'll never touch it. If your best friend says, here, I've got something that'll help you feel better, or this might help your headache, most kids will take it. They're going to trust their best friend. But these drug dealers are putting fentanyl in every single thing. They're putting it in everything there on the streets that you can buy, marijuana, and of course the cocaine and heroin, and every illicit pharmaceutical pill. They're putting it in Adderall and Lortab and OxyContin, and probably the biggest one is fake Xanax, like what she got. What she got was not Xanax. It was a fake pill made to look like Xanax, and that's what they're doing to drive addiction. They're purposefully doing this. The cartels are purposefully doing this, adding fentanyl to all these things to drive addiction. because you can get one pill that has just a tiny, tiny little bit of fentanyl in it, and you're hooked immediately. So you're going to go back to that dealer to get more of whatever it was you got. But the next time you get something, you may get marijuana, or you may get what you think is a Xanax, and they've already laced it with fentanyl, but it may have just a little bit too much fentanyl, and that's it for you. You're not coming back.
That is correct. That is correct. You know, the way the cartels are mixing it, you don't know what you're getting. You can have one pill with nothing in it, one pill with a little bit of fentanyl, one pill with a lot of fentanyl. But what you can pretty much guarantee is if you're getting pills from anyone besides your doctor, it's got fentanyl in it.
Yes, and yes, and kids have to assume that these days. Everything coming off the street or the dark web, you have to assume it's got fentanyl in it, because most likely it does.
Yep, the DEA is saying 6 out of 10 pills right now are potentially lethal with fentanyl.
Yes.
So, and that doesn't matter what kind of pill.
No. And I was invited to a conference with the DEA about 4 weeks ago, a Zoom conference with the DEA. And, they're trying their best, but with the borders and the situation the smuggling, and these traffickers are getting very, very clever with how they're smuggling this across the border over here to sell. China is making the precursors to be put in the fentanyl. They're sending it to Mexico, and the cartels are taking it over and just mass producing this fentanyl to be put into everything and sending it to the United States. I mean, it's very targeted and purposeful with what they are trying to do. And even one pill like a Xanax, fentanyl is not evenly distributed. So you can take one pill that you think is a Xanax and break it in half, and half of that pill may have a lethal dose of fentanyl, and the other half may not. So it's not within one pill, it's not even evenly distributed. One person can die and one person may not. And I know of a case that happened. A couple had one pill and they broke it in half. One person died, the other one did not.
Wow. So that's the thing. People don't seem to understand or know about fentanyl. Did you know about fentanyl before your daughter's incident?
I had heard of it, and I've tried to remember. I don't even know how I heard of it. I had heard of it, and when I saw her, like I said, I've always been very intuitive with her, and when I saw her, I knew. For some reason, I kept thinking, this is not a drug overdose. This is not anything she's messed with before. I kept thinking, this is that fentanyl I've heard about. This is fentanyl because you die immediately. And I kept thinking that to myself. And like I said, because the other meth was her drug of choice, and meth wouldn't have had that reaction with her. And while the paramedics were still here working on her, I had the passcode to her phone, which she did not know, but I did. And when she would go to sleep at night and stuff, I would sneak in her room and go through her messages to see. I always tried to stay one step ahead of her. And I would get rid of some messages if she was trying to make some transactions or whatever. And so immediately I went through her phone to see what her last conversations were and who she had been communicating with. And I came across the conversation where she was talking to this person about getting the Xanax. So we were immediately able to go locate the person that gave her the Xanax. He even came to our house and picked her up. We had surveillance cameras on the outside of the house. So we had a picture of his car to give to the detectives. I had all the conversations, the text messages to give to them. I had his phone number. I had his picture. I had, everything they needed. He would, thankfully, we're one of the lucky ones. I mean, I don't mean lucky ones, but so many families I've talked to, nothing has been done. They don't know who provided their child with whatever it was that killed them. And a lot of them do know, but nothing has been done. Right. Police have done nothing to them. But this guy, he was arrested 3 days later, but he was only in jail for 3 days on a $3,000 bond. But he had been arrested 30 times prior since he was 15 years old, and he's 27 now. He had already been arrested 30 times. 17 or 18 of those times were for drug trafficking, possession, and distribution. And that's the same thing that they charged him with.
So that he did not get charged for murdering.
No, we did not. In South Carolina, that bill had not been passed yet. That a fentanyl dealer, someone, if you sold somebody something with fentanyl in it and they die, they can be charged with homicide. That bill has not been passed yet in South Carolina. It's still in the House, and it's still up for debate. We did just pass a trafficking bill where there's a maximum and minimum sentence, which we have been trying to do. I testified at the Senate subcommittee in favor of passing both of those bills, but we're making some progress. But no, he can't be charged with homicide or murder.
That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I
Because
know.
it was not with her. She did not consent to
No,
take fentanyl.
no,
She did not know what she was taking.
no.
And I don't care if she experimented in drugs, during her lifetime or even that day. If you don't consent
Right,
and someone puts something in your drink or food and
right.
it kills you in any other situation, that would be considered murder.
It would. It's
And
poisoning. Yeah.
no one would question that.
Right, exactly. But the thing is, unfortunately, this is happening to many people that do have a drug addiction, and so a lot of the blame is put on them. Well, if they weren't taking drugs, they wouldn't be dead, and that's not true. Many people have drug addiction illness, and it's an illness of the brain. They want to stop, but they cannot stop, and many people are dying, whether they're doing cocaine or heroin. They've been doing it for many years, and they're still alive. But they get some that's got some fentanyl in it and they die. They're dying from the fentanyl. They're not dying from an overdose.
Mm-hmm.
And, the terminology is you hear people call it overdose more than anything. Well, it's not overdose, it's poisoning. Like I said, she didn't overdose. She didn't take something to overdose. She wasn't doing drugs to overdose. She took one Xanax, what she thought was a Xanax, and died. If it had been a Xanax, she would not have died. But she died because it had poison in it, which was the fentanyl.
Right. I need people to visualize the difference. So a
Yes.
traditional overdose, you would need to take a bunch of Xanax, a whole handful of Xanax,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, we've had people die from just biting a corner of a Xanax pill because that's the corner that had the fentanyl in it.
Right.
I think it was a 16-year-old boy who died that way.
Mhm.
And I want everybody to know some of these situations that are out there that happen that can be just so innocent.
Mhm.
You can have someone who's lost their health insurance and is trying to find their medication because they can no longer afford it. So
Right.
someone else down the street has their medicine, or you're in so much pain, you need your medicine, or you have severe anxiety, which is not to be discredited in any way because people
Right.
can't function. You have people who get their drugs from the street who are in high positions because doctors have stopped prescribing
Right.
opioid prescriptions.
Yep.
I want to make sure that's clear. Now, in your situation with your daughter and you didn't get justice, can you still get justice in the future, or is it too late?
Well, actually, I got a call from the solicitor's office last week that his case is finally coming up to, I don't know if it's going to be a trial or if he's just going to see the judge. I haven't been given any information as to how it's going to proceed, but I was called by the solicitor's office to meet with them next week, and they said they're going to brief me on whatever's going on with the case. They are going to let me know. So I'm looking, I'm curious to see what is going to be happening with this guy.
Okay, that's interesting. We're in California, so in California, we can't get any bills passed at all that have any kind of penalties for drug dealers who kill with fentanyl. They keep referencing the war on drugs, and this is
Yeah.
not. That's like apples and oranges at this point. The war on drugs did put Black and brown people indiscriminately into prison for the smallest amount of drugs, and that was a huge mistake. But this is not the same thing, and I don't know how people are not opening their eyes to see how different this is. Even the internet has made this a different type of monster.
Mm-hmm.
the availability of cell phones, like you said, you had to go through and check her messages,
Yeah.
makes this a different type of monster. We never in the history of drugs and the war on drugs had drug dealers killing people exponentially. This is
Mm-mm.
the number one killer of your child's age
Yes.
range from 18 to
10 to
45,
45.
right?
Yes. Yes,
And
it
more
is.
than what COVID, more than suicides, more
Right.
than cancer, more than car
Yep.
accidents. So we're not hearing about this as much as we heard about COVID. And why do you think that is, Kim?
You, I don't know. I think probably because of the stigma associated with what this is, and that most people are associating it with the drug community. People that have drug addiction, they treat them different. Drug addiction is an illness just like diabetes is, but people only want to look down and say, oh, you're addicted. Well, like you said, anybody can get addicted. I know people that are at the top of their game, doctors, surgeons, attorneys. They hurt their back and they're given Percocet. And like you said, the doctors started giving them the painkillers, and then they may stop giving them prescriptions, and these people are hooked. They're addicted. These are fine people of our community. They're not bad people. They get addicted to these drugs because of what it does to your brain chemistry. And I think this is not getting the attention because people are thinking, well, these are people that are already on drugs. Who cares? Who cares? Well, these are our kids. I bet if it was their kid, they'd care. If it was their kid that thought they were taking a Tylenol for a headache and died, they'd care if it was laced with fentanyl, but I think that it's happening a lot to people that have this illness. It's kind of getting looked at a different perspective, but this stuff is taking over, and it's purposeful. Like I said, it's coming from the cartels, and they are doing this on purpose to kill us and to get our kids. And like you said, on social media, the traffickers are targeting the kids on Snapchat, on TikTok, on Instagram. They've come up with clever little ways to use different emojis, and the kids know what these emojis are talking about. One certain emoji might mean, I'm selling meth, and like the emoji that's like ice crystals or whatever. That's an emoji for meth. Oh, somebody's selling meth. It's all over, and that's how they're selling it right on the platforms of social media, selling it to our kids, and it's coming through the mail to them. It's dangerous, and parents have got to be on the lookout and be aware of this.
The most popular question I get is why would the cartels want to kill their customers? Have you heard that before?
All the time. And it's not that they're trying to kill people, they're driving addiction. They're trying to drive, because this is making so much money for them because it's driving addiction. Fentanyl is very, very, very cheap. It's very cheap for them to produce, and they can sell it on the streets. And like I said, just the smallest amount is very, very addicting. So when a trafficker sells some pills or maybe some marijuana on the street that's laced with just a little bit of fentanyl, but enough to get somebody highly addicted, that person's going to go back, spend more money with that dealer, and the money's going to go back eventually to the cartels. It's because it's a cash cow for them. I mean, and this is not what I think. This is coming from the DEA. Right. They're not trying to kill, they're trying to drive addiction. And in the process, they don't care if people are dying because they're still making so much money from everybody else.
Wow, that means it's a shame, and they know it's a revolving door. So
Yeah,
if one person dies, there's going to be another person right behind them
that's
that
right.
will need it. They're not really thinking long term here
Mm.
because their goal is to get everyone addicted. Their goal is to get you who's listening right now
Right.
somehow addicted. So what you mentioned earlier, if they put it in a Tylenol or something, I'm not going to say brand names, but instead of Minifens, you didn't hear that,
Yeah.
or something like that, then we all be jumping up in concern, and that's not
Mhm.
too far fetched.
Mm-mm.
Honestly, if they can find a way to do
No.
it, they will.
Well,
Um,
they have the pill presses. I
mhm.
just read a recent news story about, I think it was two college girls studying for exams. They wanted, they needed to be able to focus. So they bought Adderall from somebody. It wasn't Adderall, it was fentanyl. They died. These were not bad girls. These were smart girls. They had not been using drugs. They just wanted to be able to study for their final exams. And, Adderall is it seems like every other person takes Adderall with a prescription or whatever, but it's easy to find on the streets too. And these girls just wanted to do well on their exams, got some Adderall they thought was Adderall from somebody, and died.
You know what? I think I saved a life just today. Right before this interview, I met someone who was getting their Adderall illegal, a highly prestigious member of the community that so many people know, and I scared them to death. I won't say it was he or she, because she had no idea. And I've seen her and talked about fentanyl in circles like several times, but they still didn't get it. So even though you say it once, people don't always get it.
No.
They don't understand that every pill out here that does not have your name on it, that did not come from a pharmacist, that did not come from a doctor, is potentially fatal.
Yes.
You may not die the first time if you're lucky. Kids are, because they have no tolerance to this whatsoever. And you're going to have kids out there to say, oh, I've been doing it. I did it more than one time. Yeah, well, you may get to number 7 or 10 times, but that don't mean number 8 and 11 time you're going to be okay.
So it's Russian roulette. That's all they're doing is playing. They're playing Russian roulette. And just like you said, you saved someone's life, whoever it was you talked to. They don't get it well because they don't think it's going to happen to them. It's going to happen to somebody else. They're going to get the pill that's got the fentanyl in it, not me. Well, you can't think like that anymore because, like I said, you just have to assume every pill coming off the street or anywhere but the pharmacy, it's going to have fentanyl in it.
But here's the problem with the teens doing it. Parents, what you just said, you can't think that it's not going to happen to you. Teens don't have the brain development yet to realize that they're not going to live forever. They think they're going to live forever and nothing's going to happen to them. So they do the craziest things as teens because that brain is still not developed. And so they don't know. And they'll tell you, they'll fight you and say, hey, I've been taking these. I know this guy. You cannot even say, I know this guy, because that guy has cross-contamination happening, and they might not even know they did it. But it doesn't matter because they know they're selling fentanyl. So if they're selling fentanyl, that's a problem. I have a problem with that. This can kill people and will kill people and likely have killed people if you sold it. So stop selling it. So I don't care if you sell whatever else, but don't kill people with whatever you're selling. This, what we're trying to do in California is get a proposition on the ballot for people to vote. It's a democratic process where we can actually put a law on the ballot. It's not really democratic friendly, I'll say, because it's going to cost us like $10 million to do this. How many people and organizations have $10 million sitting around? That's not very democratic, right? No. But we're going to make it happen. We have a lot of good people on our side, and we're working to get it on the ballot so that we can prosecute drug dealers at the state level to go to prison that are killing people. Only the ones that are, I don't care if you, whatever you sound, whatever, just don't kill people because that's different. And I can't subscribe to the people who are saying, well, they're just trying to feed their family. But you cannot kill other people's family members to feed your family. When has that been acceptable? So I think we really need to think this through and stop just going with the old rhetoric, which was valid rhetoric of the past. Can't put people in jail because they're trying to feed their family. Well, you know what? You got to put them in prison if they're murdering people. You would not let a murderer walk around on the street just randomly killing people. And this is not any difference just because they're doing either behind the screen or they're doing it in a different way on a text. My screensaver just went. We can't have that. So we're working really hard. But I wanted to talk to you about, the parents that are listening. Like, what advice would you give them right now? Even if they don't think their child is doing something, but what would you say to them?
I would just say to them, please talk to your kids, talk to them every week, and let them know what's going on. Let them know that they are not to touch anything that comes from anyone, even their best friend, like I said, you're going to trust your best friend, but you don't know where your best friend is getting this stuff from. Just say no. They just have to learn to say no. The kids have to say no. And if somebody approaches them and wants to sell them something, tell their parents about it. Let their parents know, and the parents need to somehow alert officials if the parents know who this other person is that's approaching their child wanting to give them stuff or sell them stuff. But parents, you just have to stay vigilant and talk to your kids about this and let them know this is serious. It can happen. It can happen to them. They may go to a party and listen to their best friend and take this pill, and it's the last thing they do. They may not be here the next morning. It's that serious, and it only takes one time. I've got a really good friend, went to church with me. Her son took a half of a Xanax. Again, what he thought was Xanax, and this is a good kid. I mean, a good kid. Half of a Xanax and died immediately. It had that much fentanyl in it, and a half of one. And this happened 4 months prior to me losing my daughter. But parents, you have to talk to your kids about this and let them know how dangerous it is. Let them know that, especially on the social media platforms, which most kids pretty much live on all the time, that they have got to be aware that they may be approached on social media. They need to look out for these things. They need to block somebody immediately that might approach them wanting to, sell them these things. But parents, I think the biggest thing is just communication. Try to notice, like if you notice any changes in your kid, if they're acting a little bit different, if they're acting a lot more sleepy, if they're sleepy a lot more often or groggy or tired, that could be indications of some type of drug use. But the biggest thing is just to be observant, and talk to them, talk to the kids, not just once, not just twice, but consistently. If they see stories on the news, like I post different stories on our Facebook page, on Kelsey's Cause Facebook page, and on Instagram and Twitter, different stories that are coming up in the news, information on fentanyl and that kind of thing. Have the kids read these stories, show these stories to the kids, because it's young people, mainly young people their age, that's being affected, and maybe it'll hit home with them. If they see all this stuff in the news of all these young people dying from this so quickly and innocently from this poison.
Right. Well, Kim, I could talk to you all day about this because that my whole goal is to get the word out as much as possible. I believe that talking to people and letting them hear these stories will wake people up and
Yeah.
hopefully realize there's no stigma to this. I mean, this is
Mhm.
affecting senior citizens
Oh
too. Like
yeah.
your grandma. Your
And
grandma might be addicted and you don't even know it. And we just released a press release today and a video and infographic about seniors and fentanyl too. So
mhm.
this is affecting every single
Yes,
person, every age group, infants. The rates are four
infants are
times,
dying
yeah,
because
four
of
times
this.
the rate that used to be. Um,
Yep,
it's out of
from cross
control.
contamination. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's
I
out, it's
just
out
read
of
another.
control. Go ahead. Sorry. Go
uh,
ahead.
I just read another news report 2 days ago about another infant dying from fentanyl contamination because the parents had it in the house and there was cross contamination. So, like I said, this is like you said, it's affecting everyone. Everyone.
Yeah, it's really sad. Well, I want to
Yeah.
thank you. We're over time, but I want to thank you
Oh,
for joining us today because you've been great and
thank
what
you.
you've been saying I think is very helpful and will save some lives.
I
And
hope.
and it's heartbreaking, but we keep hearing these same stories in
Hmm.
different ways, but all with them you count on one hand the types of stories that people are finding their child
Hmm.
dead or a family member dead.
Yeah.
It's pretty consistent with the categories of how it happens. Like you have
Yeah.
either a kid they find in their room,
Mhm.
a person who was using got a fake pill. I mean, it's very consistent. So again, I want to thank you for coming on. I know it's difficult. These stories need to be told so we can
Yeah.
just start saving people out here from
Yeah.
this illicit drug that's a killer. All
Well,
right. Go
I
ahead.
appreciate what you're doing, just helping us, to be vocal about it. Because like I said, people are not going to know about it unless other people talk about it. And so I appreciate you putting it out there to the masses the way that you are. That's awesome.
Oh, I appreciate that from you, especially from
Mhm.
you. It means a lot. All right. I want to thank you all for participating and listening to the Fentanyl Solution. We will be live every Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're at Fentanyl SOL, at Fentanyl Soul, and our website is fentanylsolution.org. We also have the fentanylsolutiongroup.org. So visit both of those websites. You can scan our QR code to donate. That helps us to keep spreading the word and awareness about the dangers of fentanyl. Please be sure to leave a comment and rate our podcast. Until next time, I want you to remember that you are the solution. So take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Okay. And the broadcast.